I've been getting a fair amount of email about using the suggested parts when we build a plane. I like the AR8010T receiver because it's small, it has telemetry built in, and it has a number of channels I need. And I'm using the Spectrum A6110 servos. They've got plenty of torque, and we'd find out that they're a lot tougher than I thought. Plus, I needed 7 of the servos, so their price made a big difference as well. I also strayed from the Evolution engine that Horizon would have us use. Instead, I went with the NGH GT09 Pro 9cc engine. Getting the name for this motor out is the hardest thing about using it. The 9cc NGH motor fits the Valiant very well, and I like that it uses a can-type muffler. This muffler makes cutting the cowl for this plane way easier. Even though the cabin area looks pretty big, once you start putting all the equipment in there, it gets smaller. It's a little more crowded in here because I chose to use separate channels for each flap and each aileron, and another one for the engine kill switch. When the green LED is illuminated, that tells me that the ignition is on. I always put the engine kill on a momentary switch so I can't shut it off by accident. I even used the fuel tank that came with the model. That's the first time I've done that in years. Hangar 9 usually does a good job with control surface linkages, and the Valiant's no exception. The Valiant has nicely sized ailerons and flaps, both of which are very effective. The included linkages made setting all this up a lot easier. One of the things I love about the Valiant is how well it handles having a bunch of flaps deployed. And I was going to find out in the Maiden flight that all of that flap responsiveness can work against you if you get this plane in the wrong attitude. The elevators and rudder on the Valiant are both very responsive and easy to fly. We get this large magnetic hatch because this plane is designed to work on electric as well as gas. I like it because it gives me access to the fuel tank. On Maiden Day, I had already range checked the radio, and the NGH motor started up fine and ran well. I was actually thinking about not doing this maiden flight right here because of the wind. But I guess I didn't want to be smarter than everybody else, so I went ahead and tried it anyway. I can't blame some of this on the Valiant itself. Because it flies so well, it makes me confident that I can fly it in conditions that I shouldn't. I also remember clearly thinking that if this were somebody else's plane, I wouldn't fly it today. I'd wait for better wind conditions. The wind was pretty gusty. Sometimes it calmed down real well, and other times it got a lot stronger. For the takeoff, I just kind of pointed it into the wind and gassed it. The NGH motor came up nicely and had plenty of power. As soon as the Valiant broke free of the ground, I could see that it needed a bunch of up trim, so I just got it up a little ways and added some trim and got that straightened out pretty well for the wind. The Valiant wing makes a lot of lift, and that can make it tough to get it trimmed out when there's a lot of wind. I flew a couple laps around the field and adjusted the ailerons some and got it where it was pretty decent. We have to remember that this is a relatively small plane and a lot of wind. It's going to bounce around a little bit. Every once in a while I go hands off on the radio to see what the Valiant would do. And you can see here the wings are rocking a little bit from the wind, but other than that it's flying straight and level. And that's the kind of thing that makes me brave and apparently a little stupid. Part of that stupid is why there's no sound to this video, because I plugged the microphone into the wrong channel on the camera. The only thing we're really missing is that 9cc engine pulling this plane around really well. Most of these laps are done at half to 3/4 throttle, even into the wind. Going by this time, I flipped the dual rate switch to all I can get. And we see that this plane actually has a pretty decent roll rate. What I was really looking for there is how much control I had over the wing in case I would get in trouble on landing. Here I took the turn out farther so I could kind of simulate what it'd be like on approach for landing. And the Valiant did real well. It wasn't bouncing around too much. Here again, I let go of the sticks as it went by, and the Valiant flew nice and straight and level. I absolutely love how a Valiant reacts to putting the full flaps out. But in this much wind, that turned out to be a bad idea. You can see right in here as I hit the switch, the plane ballooned, as I was expecting it to, so everything was going normally. I used a little rudder to help keep the wing a little flatter as I made the turn into the field. Got off the gas a little bit and the Valiant all but stopped in the air. I knew that if the wind gusted quick, this thing was probably in a big stall, so I started to get back on the gas and turn it downwind. The right wing kicked up, the flaps went into working like an elevator, and down it went. When you gas a plane like this with the flaps at full deflection, they very often want to go nearly straight up. And when that right wing popped up, the flaps were now big elevators. I know I tried to hit the flap switch to pull him back in, but I either missed or the 2-second speed we had on the flaps just took too long. I had the Valiant in a really bad position, and this is the result. The Valiant is fixable, and I decided we're going to rebuild it and do a story on rebuilding a crashed plane. Stay tuned for that story coming up.